This lesson is solving equations by factoring. So since we've already learned factoring, now we're going to figure out why we're using factoring and what use there is. So let me explain a few things prior to the actual factoring process. There's a property called zero product property. The general form is A times 0 equals 0, meaning any number times 0 equals 0. So for example, we all know 3 times 0 is 0. And if there were two factors multiplied together to equal 0, one of these would have to be a 0. Or both, but definitely one. So that is, I know, you're like saying maybe that's an obvious concept, but keep that in mind when we work through the next few problems. So the directions for a problem might say solve by factoring. And here is the problem. 4x squared plus 32x equals 0. So we're going to solve for x. First thing we need to do is look for common factors. So look for the 4 and the 32, and you see a common factor of 4. And then we can see that both terms have an x in them, so there's a common factor of 4x. When you're factoring, you take out the common factor, and then what remains is the x plus 8 equals 0. Now this is where the zero product property comes in. There's two factors here multiplied together to equal 0. 4x times, so there's an invisible times sign here. The quantity x plus 8 equals 0. So one of these has to be a 0 according to zero product property. So what you do is you take your one factor, 4x, and set it equal to 0. And you take your other factor, x plus 8, and set that equal to 0. Solve each of those independently. 4x equals 0, divide by 4 on both sides of that equation, and you get an answer of x equals 0. And then on this one you would subtract 8 from both sides and get a solution of x equals negative 8. So there's two solutions for this problem. One would be 0, and one would be negative 8. Let's look at another problem. Solve for x using factoring. 3x squared minus 12x equals 0. When we look for a common factor, again, 3 is in common and an x. So our common factor is 3x. When we take that out, 3x, in the parentheses we would have, when we do our factoring, x minus 12 equals 0. Again, two factors. This is where the important hidden multiplication sign is. That's where you want it, because that is one factor times another factor equals 0. 3x would equal 0, or x minus 12 would equal 0. Again, solve those independently of one another, and you would have x equals 0 with that solving, and x equals 12 for this one. Now let's look at factoring when we have a trinomial. So we have to go back to factoring and looking for factors of 3 with the relationship to the middle number. Factors of 3 are 1 times 3, and they add to be 4. So there is our factoring for that trinomial. Similar to what we just did, we then bring in the zero product property. Here is one factor times another factor equals 0. So x plus 1 would equal 0, or x plus 3 equals 0. Solve them each independently. You get x equals negative 1, and you get an answer of x equals negative 3, which means there's two solutions to this equation, here and here. Now you can easily check. You take your solution of x equals negative 1, and you put it in both places for the x. So negative 1 squared plus 4 times negative 1 plus 3. Does that equal 0? Question mark, does it equal 0? Well, negative 1 squared is 1, plus negative 4, plus 3, and that does indeed equal 0. Then you take your other solution of negative 3 and put that in both places in that original problem. Do the math using order of operations, and you will see that is a correct solution. Let's look at this problem. X squared minus 6x plus 5. Factors of 5 are 1 and 5, but it is important that you use -1 and -5, because those two multiplied together would give you a positive 5, and those two added together would give you a -6. So here is your factoring using those factors. And again, here is 1 times another equals 0. And again, another zero product property. Solve each as 0. All the problems they give you will have an equal to 0. So there won't be any other manipulation of the numbers for you. Here we have a problem. X squared minus 10x minus 24 equals 0. 24 has a variety of factors. 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. Let's look at the relationship to 10. 1 and 24, there isn't one to add. 2 and 12, yes, there is. 3 and 8, when those two add together, could that be a 10? No. 4 and 6, yes. Now we need to decide between these two. 2 times 12 is 24 if one of them is negative. So if -2 times 12 or +2 times -12. Same situation here. One of these would have to be negative to make a -24. So one could be -4 and 6 or 4 and -6 multiplied together to give you that. Now let's look at our pairs. Which of these 4 choices add up to be a -10? -2 plus 12 equals a +10, so that is not our choice. -4 plus a +6 does not add together to be a -10. 2 plus -12 does, and we should probably check our last one to make sure we haven't made a math error. 4 plus -6 does not equal -10. These are the two numbers that would go into your factoring. Again, 2 factors to equal 0. I like to split down the middle so that way I can separate my work here. So again, this is your time sign. Going back to zero product, remember A times 0 will equal 0. And either of these could be the 0. So x minus 12 could be 0, giving us an answer of 12, or x plus 2 could be equal to 0, giving us an answer of -2. Again, 2 solutions for that problem.